Okay, so let's take a look at how you can create Azure database for MySQL Server instance and also use ODBC driver for MySQL to establish the connection and creating a data source. Right. So first thing we will go to Azure portal and we will click on services. And in all services you can find database. Now here I have Azure database for MySQL Server. If I click on it, you will find I have existing connection. But if you want to make one, you can click on create. Now here you can see you have option to choose from flexible server or WordPress stack. So I will use flexible server. And here you can see I have options on the left and estimated cost on the right. So with options I can choose subscription and resource group, right? There is a option for adding server name, so it needs to be proper server name, otherwise it will create errors like this. It needs to be 3 characters and all that. Then there is also region to pick, right, which is east US for me. You can pick as per your area. Then you have this MySQL version between 8 and 5.7, right? So you pick the one that suits your case. So in near future it could be 12. Pick that one if it's LTS. Then comes workload. You pick the one that suits you. If you're a business, pick that. If you're enterprise, pick tier 1. And for tests like this, pick development or hobby. Now compute and storage is complicated. Here the cost will change. So whatever you configure here will directly affect the price. So pick the burstable so that the minimum workload. General purpose will have a bit medium pricing range, and business critical is good for enterprise. Now here compute size, you can see 1 core and 2 GB memory. So I picked that one and we move to our settings back again. And here finally we will have to do the authentication, right? And for that you can use username and password, right? So another option is using Azure Active Directory authentication. So between that you can choose or choose both. So like this I created instance and then I moved to that particular instance, which should look something like this, right? Now it will give you server name, then your login name, right? And then MySQL version, available zone, and you have everything that needs to be used for connection, right? One more thing to point out is networking part. Here you have to enable disable your SSL and also allow some of the IP address to connect to, and then click on save. Once you do that, everything in connectivity part makes sense, right? Now that we have everything set up, our goal is to get the ODBC driver for MySQL working so that I can connect from desktop, I can connect from Power BI, right? So to get that driver, what I will do, I will go to MySQL, then click on downloads, right? And this is the homepage of MySQL at the time of doing this session, right? So here within downloads we need to find community downloads, right? And then choose ODBC driver. You can also choose .NET, but choose ODBC for this particular purpose. Now we also need to run this installer, right? You can also use typical zip file etc to manually copy things, but I think installer is a good choice. Now if I run this, it should show me setup wizard like this. So we will just run. Currently I already have driver, so it will ask me to modify also, right? So just go through all the process and then finish, right? And it should show something like this as a finished setup, right? Now we will move to our details regarding this connection, right? So this connection details we will use against ODBC, right? So ODBC data source, and mine is supposed to be this 64-bit, so I will open, right? So the difference does happen, so make sure to check the 32-bit or 64, because the driver is available on 64-bit because we selected that option, remember, right? So if I click on add, you will find the driver in the list as MySQL ODBC 8 Unicode. Make sure that this ODBC 8 matches with your version of MySQL here 8, right? Because that would otherwise be mismatch. So click finish, and there you have your data source name. So let's see MySQL for Azure. So I will name it like that. Next thing, I will have to enter this particular server name by copy pasting into this, right? Then comes my username, which is this, and I will paste it here. Now comes the password part, right? So I will have to enter this. Now if I paste it here, you have something to test on. So if we click on test, it says connection successful. So I will click on OK. So we have our connection ready, right? Then we click on OK. So it should form a connection here, right? So whenever we want to connect to say Power BI or any ODBC application, it will be able to connect here, right? So that driver will make use of this particular connection, right? You can also see MySQL ODBC for Power BI, and there are connectors. So if you check the data source from ODBC to MySQL for, sorry, should be there. So Power Query MySQL database connector, and take a look at that, right? So it also makes use of this particular ODBC driver, right? So it should show you how to do the connection, etc., right? So this was just to give you an idea where else you can use this ODBC option, right? So here you see ODBC connectors, right? Variety of connection options. So let's test this out just to see if it really works. So we go to Power BI desktop. Currently I don't have any strong data to show up, right? But still we'll try and fetch it just to verify our theory that we can use ODBC driver and connect Azure to it and all the way to the Power BI. Now the work for ODBC administrator is done, so I will just click OK and it will go in background. Meanwhile, you have Power BI running. In that case, you can just log in using your ID that you authenticated with for Power BI. Now what we'll do is we will click on get data, right? And then we will have to find the option for ODBC within the list. So from there we will be able to connect with MySQL. So here you see your option for ODBC If not listed, you can manually find it and click on connect. You should open a prompt that will show you the resource name. Here you can see MySQL for Azure. So I will select that. Advanced option, if you want to edit any, click OK. So let's see if it connects. If it does connect, right, here you can see MySQL for Azure. I can type in the name, password. Now once you add these two things, connect. As you can see, the connection is established. So our whole workflow with ODBC driver and Power BI also worked. So we pretty much managed to connect to Azure database, and now I can even fetch this table from sample database. I can see the preview is being generated. If it works out, we can load the data, and though it's not something visualization friendly or even something we can use upon, it's HR data. As you can see, let's see if we can use load, and it should go into the fields. So it does work actually, everything we have got, right? It is asking me to apply changes. As you can see, all the rows are being pushed, 7 or 8 rows, and once it is done, we are also done with the session on using Azure Cloud for MySQL along with ODBC driver for MySQL to make connections on desktop or any ODBC interfaced applications. So as you can see, it is working, only 8 rows, so not a lot of data, and it is showing green mark. So we are done. Considering it's some sample data, I don't know what to really drop on. Like, let's say ID, I drop on, right? So ID and salary, right? So I don't know, it will try and generate whatever sort of visualization. I don't think so. So let's go with bar chart for the sake of that. So it is picking bar chart. So yeah, that's pretty much it. We managed to connect to cloud data with ODBC MySQL driver.